Let's recap where we are. Moses was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, but he was a Hebrew, and the Hebrews were slaves. Forced to plant and harvest, make bricks, build cities, Moses caught one of the slave masters beating a Hebrew and killed him. So Moses had to run. He ran to another country, found a job as a shepherd, met a girl he loved, got married, had a baby, and then many years later, God spoke to Moses, out of a burning bush of all things. God told Moses that he was going to go back to Egypt to set the Hebrews free. So here we are. God has told Moses his plan, but Moses was in a different country with his wife and son, and his wife was pregnant, about to have another child. But he had to go back to Egypt, where there was now a new Pharaoh, and Moses had run away because the old Pharaoh wanted to kill him. Go back? That sounded dangerous, crazy. But God told him what to do, and Moses had two choices, either obey God or disobey God, and disobeying God would never go well. So Moses left his father-in-law's house and went with his wife, his son, and his new baby boy and travelled back across the desert to Egypt. When they arrived, Moses met his real brother Aaron, and they went to the leaders of the Hebrews. Moses told them who he was and what God had said. He showed them the miracle of his walking stick turning into a snake and back into a stick, so that they would have no doubts about Moses speaking on behalf of God. And all the people of Israel knew that God loved them and cared about them and was going to do something special. God told Moses everything that would happen. God knew what was going to happen next, and the thing after that, and the thing after that. He knew what would happen, what Pharaoh would say, and what a stubborn man Pharaoh was. God would take something that was bad and make something great out of it that would never be forgotten, even to this day. The next bit was scary for Moses. He had to go and see Pharaoh. What would happen? Moses and Aaron went to the palace, and Moses asked to see the king of Egypt. It must have been awkward. Moses and Pharaoh probably grew up in the same palace. They were like cousins. Then Moses killed a man and left, and that was 40 years ago. Quite a weird family reunion. Moses had been a shepherd and his cousin was king of Egypt. What we do know is that Pharaoh wasn't going to like what Moses had to say. Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh and said,
"This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a feast for me in the desert." Moses, I have invited you here because you are as family to me. I know you, but why would I do this? I do not know who this God of Israel is. I know who I am. I am Pharaoh. I know who the Hebrews are. They are my slaves. You want me to let them go and worship this God and stop working for up to 2 weeks? No chance, Moses. They have work to do. Get lost.
Pharaoh didn't let them go. In fact, Pharaoh made life even more difficult.
Come here. Yes, now listen. If these Hebrews have so much free time that they can go wandering off to see their God, then they must be so lazy. Let's make them work harder. Don't give them any straw. Let them use stubble from the field. Let them collect it for themselves, and they will have to make the same number of bricks. Then they won't be so lazy. Moses and his God. Ha!
The people of Israel got cross, but not with Pharaoh. They said to Moses, "Pharaoh treats us like a bad smell, and it's all your fault for asking Pharaoh to let us go. Our lives are worse because of you. They beat us more than ever. It's your fault, Moses. Why did you do this?" Moses prayed to God. "God, why have you brought more suffering to your people? Why did you send me? Since I've spoken to Pharaoh, things have gotten worse. I thought you were going to save your people." God would save his people, but first, God would give Pharaoh and the Egyptians every chance to choose to do good for themselves. God knew that Pharaoh would ignore him, but God would still give him the choice. God told Moses to go back to Pharaoh. Moses and Aaron showed that God had power. They threw the walking stick to the ground, and it turned into a snake again. But Pharaoh wasn't impressed.
Ha! A simple trick. My magicians can do the same.
Pharaoh's magicians looked at what Moses had done and said,
Yes, Master, I can do that.
They threw their sticks down and their sticks became snakes too. The Bible doesn't say how Pharaoh's magicians did it, but there are powers that we can't see, and some of those powers belong to the devil. If the magicians could do it too, how does that prove how powerful God is? Well, the snake that had been Moses' stick ate all the snakes that Pharaoh's magicians made. Aaron picked the snake up and it became a stick again, but the magician's sticks were gone. Truly, God was with them. But Pharaoh said,
No, I will not let your people go.
God told Moses and Aaron to wait for Pharaoh by the river Nile the next day and to say,
God says, let my people go and worship me, or I will turn your rivers and water into blood.
But Pharaoh laughed.
Ha! Go on then, Moses. I will not let your people go.
So Aaron touched the river Nile with the stick, and the river turned to blood. The fish died, the river stank, and all the water turned to blood, even water that people had already collected to drink and wash with. The Egyptians had to dig into the ground to try and find water. Pharaoh's magicians said,
Yes, Master, we can do that too. By our water god, Hep.
I don't know how they found water that wasn't already turned to blood, or why they didn't keep it to drink, but they told Pharaoh they could change some water into blood too. But God had turned the entire Nile River into blood. After 7 days, Moses and Aaron came back to Pharaoh and said,
Pharaoh, God says, let my people go and worship me, or I will send frogs to swarm the land.
But Pharaoh said,
No, I will not let your people go.
Pharaoh wasn't about to let someone, even God, tell him what to do. So frogs came, and more frogs. Pharaoh's magician said,
Yes, Master, we can do that by the frog god, Hecate.
They somehow got more frogs to come. Why would they want more frogs? Soon the entire land of Egypt was covered in frogs, but they couldn't make them go away.
No, Pharaoh, we can't stop the frogs.
Pharaoh called Moses and said,
Fine. I will let your people go, Moses. Just ask God to get rid of these awful frogs.
Moses said,
So, Pharaoh, when should I ask God to destroy the frogs?
and Pharaoh said,
Tomorrow, Moses. Tomorrow.
Moses said,
So tomorrow, Pharaoh, I will pray to God that the frogs will be destroyed. And then you will see who the true God of Israel is.
The next day, Moses prayed to God and God stopped the frogs coming. And the frogs died in the houses, the streets and the fields. They collected the frogs into giant piles and they stank as they rotted. Disgusting. Would Pharaoh let God's people go now?
You know what? The frogs are gone. I will not let your people go.
God told Moses to strike the dust of the ground with his stick, and when Moses did, the dust turned to lice. The people of Egypt were plagued by these bugs. All the dust of the ground turned into these little nibbling creatures. They landed on the Egyptians and the animals, itching them and biting them. Pharaoh called for his magicians, who tried to create lice from the dust. Why would they want more bugs? To prove they could do it too, like with the snakes and blood and frogs. But when they tried to create bugs from dust, they said,
Master, we can't do that.
they thought they were clever. They thought they could do magic, but God was so much greater.
Only God can do that.
The bugs were itching them and biting them all till they couldn't handle it any longer, and they complained to Pharaoh. And we'll leave the Egyptians there, covered in bugs, until next week. If you remember, God made the first man, Adam, out of the dust of the ground. It was easy for God to make these bugs, but no power exists that can copy the act of creation, because that comes from God and God alone. When we see the world around us, even though we can make amazing things, we can only make things with what God has already created in the world. Pharaoh's magicians could call the frogs, but they couldn't create them. God made humans, me and you. We're his creation, and God wants us to be with him forever. If Pharaoh had obeyed God, then he wouldn't have had all the problems that he had. We should obey God too. God asks us to tell him that we're sorry for all the things that we've done wrong, and then God will make us into something new, a new creation that can be with him forever in heaven. Thanks for listening.